All right, our next question comes from Stuart Hall.
Just to Mr. Kissick or both? Or?
To Mr. Jordan.
Oh, okay. Well, the president, and this is an Ohio issue as well, high-speed rail has been proposed for Ohio. Now, there are arguments whether it's 39 mile an hour or 79 mile an hour high-speed rail.
That's the first thing I was going to say. You use high-speed in the loose sense of the word, I think.
And I will grant you that. The president, however, envisions a massive nationwide high-speed rail that maybe the states will pay for or maybe they won't. But the point is he wants it. With $3 a gallon gas, that may not seem very realistic. With $7 a gallon gas, that might seem realistic. But either way, what are your thoughts on a nationwide mass transit system?
I think it's ridiculous. I mean, I think it makes no sense. It doesn't make sense for the Midwest. I mean, you're really going to have high-speed rail in Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa and Western Ohio. I mean, I just think it makes, even the proponents, the folks at Department of Transportation, who are the proponents of high-speed rail, have said when they get it up and running, it's not even the folks who are for it will tell you from the get-go. I mean, this is at least bureaucrats being somewhat honest with the taxpayers, I guess. Even from the get-go, it loses money. So it's not sustainable. It's when you do the surveys and talk to people and just the stuff you do in politics when you're out talking with constituents and business owners, nobody wants this thing. So it may have a place in, New York City, Washington, D.C., not in Ohio. It's a boondoggle. We shouldn't do it. It makes absolutely no sense in my judgment. Rail for freight and moving things for that's one thing. But high-speed passenger rail, well, if you couldn't gather, I'm against the thing.
Mr. Kissick, how do you feel?
Well, I mean, we're already seeing with Amtrak, we're subsidizing $4 billion a year at least just to keep that up and running. There is no evidence suggesting that a new high-speed rail system going across state lines, going point A to point B, would be any better. That would be any more efficient. If the people want high-speed rail, it needs to be left to the free market to determine that. The market forces will be the best determinant whether it would work, whether it would be viable in the first place, and how long-lasting it would be. I mean, to be honest, and it's easy to say because we don't have a Democratic opponent here to refute this, but the whole discussion of the high-speed rail is really nothing more than an appeal to the Democratic Party's eco-friendly base. And that's the idea, is creating this false promise that setting up a high-speed rail system is somehow going to save the planet, from human CO2 emissions. And they're trying to put a positive business spin to it, that how more effectively people can go from one part of Ohio to another, to go from, say, Columbus to Kansas City. Even though just kind of throwing those cities out, out of the air, but there's no evidence that this would work any more efficiently than the current modes of transportation that we have today.
Any follow-up question from the panel? Our next question from Mr. Jenkins to Mr.
Let's
Kissick.
see if we can get some differentiating opinions from you guys. Let's go. The nations and the state presidents are at capacity and beyond now. Would you be in favor of the decriminalization of certain drugs in an effort to reduce prison overcrowding?
Well, I mean, I do favor legalization of marijuana. An intoxicant like that that's naturally occurring, that requires no hazardous production, capability. This is the big difference between, say, advocating, legalizing marijuana as opposed to, say, meth, which is dangerous not just, for the general public in terms of overall health, but the manufacturing of it. People have lost their homes. God forbid someone decides to manufacture it while they live in an apartment, and everyone else in that building loses their home. Something like marijuana that is, like I said, naturally occurring, legalized, I mean, it'll have a bit of effect on prison overcrowding. There's probably a lot more that can be done to alleviate that situation. Obviously, I'll have to admit I haven't looked at the overcrowding concerns that much. It is kind of a state-by-state issue. It doesn't really apply as much to federal prison populations. But if someone wants to make that choice, that should be their private choice. A parent, obviously, they're making a bad choice in front of their children if they choose to smoke, but they're also making the same bad choice with items that are already currently legal, such as with alcohol, with tobacco. We saw in the early part of the 20th century that prohibition it caused organized crime and its profitability to explode. And we're seeing that now down in Mexico. The drug gangs are raking in billions of dollars, money that could be going to, say, different manufacturers. You know, Jack Daniels is very profitable. Anheuser-Busch is a very profitable operation, but they're paying taxes, they're employing people, and they are actually contributing, you know, in their own, you know, so as somebody who doesn't drink very much, I mean, they're contributing their own kind of, you know, twisted way, let's put it, but they're still, you know, contributing to employment, to the tax revenues, and the same principles should be applied to marijuana. And there's also just the individual sovereignty aspect of it. It's just something that only affects the individual. Regulated under the same auspices as alcohol and tobacco. You should not be driving when you're, you know, if you've induced it, obviously. And,
Mr. Jordan.
I'm opposed, as you probably gathered, to any type of legalization of those kind of substances. Regarding the crowded prisons, look, should be examined, and to the extent that you can maybe help with the crowded prison situation by looking at individuals who are there for nonviolent offenses. That's something I think that warrants at least an examination. But remember, the fundamental purpose of government is safety of its citizens. Whether you're talking national defense at the federal level, state level, keeping criminals and bad folks as much as you can once they've done something away from citizens. So that is truly a legitimate function of government, and we need to take that seriously. I think sometimes we, particularly at the federal level, spend so much money on everything else, we're forgetting, you know, resources that need to be used to, for example, secure our borders, protect the national defense of the homeland. So, look, I'm willing to look at that, but legalization of marijuana is the wrong thing to do.
Follow-up, Mr. Letterman.
For Mr. Jordan, great, no argument on the role of government, but if enforcing marijuana prosecution is the role of government, would you then argue for the reimposition of prohibition? I mean, same thing, isn't it, that somebody using a mind-altering substance, particularly those who have caused no harm to others, although granted the risk is there, but I mean, if the role of government is to prevent against the possible what coulds with one drug, I mean, where do you draw the line?
I would draw the line where it's currently drawn.
I'm sorry?
I would draw the line where it's currently drawn.
I'm sorry, can you explain that?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not for legalizing marijuana. I've made that clear. I think, frankly, part of this comes, I think, from my background in working with student athletes. I think it's the wrong kind of message to send to young people, and I would not change the law to decriminalize marijuana.